Hi, Adam Bazalgette here, founder of Scratch Golf Academy. Today's subject, my #1 tip to stop complicated swing thoughts and simplify your golf swing. Who doesn't want that? I've struggled plenty in my long golf life with complicated swing thoughts. They really never helped. And that's because the swing really isn't that complicated, at least in theory. So I'm going to show you several parts of the swing in broad brush terms and how simple they are, again, at least in theory. So you'll know if I'm going down the road of feeling like my swing's really got a lot of pieces, I'm on the wrong road, and you'll be able to turn back, simplify it again. Hopefully this will help you. Very briefly, if you're new to Scratch Golf, or perhaps you've watched our videos before but have never subscribed, I'd really appreciate it if you'd hit the subscribe button. Also hit the bell there, then you'll be notified every time a new video is coming your way. So first, let's look at the overall pivot. Let's look at Fred Couples. His hat's right at the edge of that tent. Just watch it. Pretty darn centered and still going back. So he pivots around his spine there. Adam Scott, as we look down the line, beautiful job there, pivoting around his spine there, which of course is now inclined. And so it's a nice centered pivot going back, storing good energy. Let's look at Adam coming through. Stays nicely on that pitch coming through with his spine. Not perfectly still, but certainly close enough. Now let's replace him with, say, Tommy Fleetwood. You can see his head face on at the corner of the teaching building. Near enough, pretty darn still. Let's watch his hips on the way down, and let's see what happens. They certainly shift a little towards the target and turn really hard. And I would say Fred Couples would be a guy that shifts his hips even more than that, and he also turns them really hard, but he makes a pretty big lateral shift, more or less hip over ankle there. So they don't all do it exactly the same, but we could say certainly they pivot around their axis, head's pretty still in the backswing, and although the head stays pretty still coming down, look at Fred's head there, they drive the hips a little bit towards the target, creating this sort of a look. Okay, so what are we looking at here? Well, here's the first thing. If you stand up straight and put your arms out and just pivot, your axis, your spine will stay nice and steady. Your head won't move, if at all, very, very little. So it's a little more complicated when you bend forward because you're having to pivot on this angle now. But again, it's very natural. Just pivoting around your spine will keep your head still. A stable axis, obviously far more preferable than a moving axis in the backswing. And of course, you store power by doing that. Downswing wise, bucket toss is one of my favorites. Picture a heavy bucket of water or sand or something, and picture my head stuck against something where I could swivel it but not move it side to side. If I get the bucket back to here and I want to create energy going in that direction, I'm going to get some thrust of my hips and my glutes. Different players that are great players do it a little bit differently. Some are more rotary than others, but round numbers, I'm going to create energy in that direction. And if my head is pretty still through this part of the swing, that gives me repeatability for the bottom out point. So again, nothing too complicated in terms of the pivot both back and through. Well, swing plane is something that some people think is very complicated. It really isn't. It's just the design of the golf club. Certainly drivers are a little lower and flatter and wedges more upright. But let's have a look at Justin Thomas on the left. Looks like a middle iron, maybe a 5-6 iron, something like that. Right up the old plane, just perfect. Not every great player does it exactly as, in such a standard fashion as that, but that's what you're looking for. And then later in the backswing, what you usually see is the wrists start to break and the arms start to swing up the chest a little bit. The arms will rise off that plane. He does it quite a bit. That's why I've picked him. And in contrast, let's say Rory, again, pretty darn good takeaway, not precisely on the line, but close enough. He gets his arms a little bit flatter at the top. So, hey, two slightly different ways of doing it, but it's the design of the club. It's not complicated. And certainly as his arms swing down, he gets close to that. And the same for Justin Thomas. His arms drop down. He's very close to that line coming in to hit it. Okay, hula hoop laid a little bit back on its side by 2 alignment rods. This is an 8 iron, so give or take, that's about what we've got there. Here's the good news for you. The designer of the golf clubs helped you out here. They've designed the shaft at that angle. You don't have to fight it and battle it to get on plane. What you don't want to do is start trying to place it in different places and try to do it right. Just get a little bit of motion. If your hands are passive here, you're going to be pretty close to being on the correct plane. And as you get a little bit further back, sure, the wrists start to break, primarily upwards, not exactly, and the arms rise up a little bit. So you rise up above what would be parallel to that hoop. Keep coming back to things like this. Get in front of a mirror. This is one of the areas that really gets people sideways with their swing. Thinking too much, manipulating the club. You're not going to play well if you do that. Plane is important. Well, next on my list, extension, connection. What are we trying to do with the arms, especially the trail arm? Let's look at Justin Rose. I've got him both face on in the rear. His right arm there, his trail arm is beginning to fold. It's pretty extended, though I certainly wouldn't say it's tucked against his body. It's fairly folded there now, but certainly his upper arm is not stuck up against his body quite. Let's have a look from this view. Yeah, it's just a little bit away from him, not drastically. And as we get to the top, give or take about a right angle there of fold at the top, about 90 degrees. Upper arm again is definitely not stuck to him, but it is definitely not flying way away from him either. All right, this trail arm was one that really used to trip me up and cause me problems for a long time in my golf life. Needn't have. Try this, it'll drill. So for the right-hander, it's the right arm is the trail arm. Hold the club where it's maybe chest high and horizontal to the ground. Arms just extended, but triceps, yeah, slightly touching the chest. And make a few swings exactly, as much as you exactly can on a horizontal angle. You'll notice that right arm doesn't fold initially, but starts to fold somewhere in this area is where it folds, and when it's finished folding, it's reasonably close to my side, but I've never seen anyone do that and tuck their arm in. I've never seen anybody keep the thing wildly straight and move their hands away from their body. That's as simple as it is. Don't overthink this thing. Get over there, same feel now, I'm tipped over, right arm folds but is reasonably close to my body, and roughly speaking, something close to a right angle at the top. If you're making it any more complicated than that, don't do it. You're on the wrong track. Okay, final thing on the list, and that is, how about the downswing? Do you tuck your right arm in? Do you try to hold your angle? What are you trying to do? I'd go with a little simpler thought overall than that. There's Aaron Badley as a relative youngster hitting the ball on the right. That's actually Annika Sorenstam hitting a little pitch shot from just off the green. She came out to the place where I work, that's the teaching center, and was nice enough to let me film her. So let's look at her, and here's the way I would think of it. If you want control, which is what she wants here, she's just a few yards off the green, you don't want a lot of wrist break. So just watch how the arms, shoulders, and wrists work largely as a unit there through the shot. That's control. If you want some speed, let's get him about there. You are going to have to go from some wrist cock to adding some more to loading wrist cock, and then from there letting it release with a little more vigor and speed. Okay, before we get into this element of the golf swing, surprisingly simple, I'm going to show you with this rod. A word of advice, okay, in theory the game's easy. You're a human being, there's a lot to this game. You will not find that your improvement is just as clean and easy as that in golf. It's a little more complicated, and what you will find, if you're one of the diligent people that likes to practice, likes to film their swing, likes to get instruction and really try to genuinely improve, you're going to have some bumps in the road and some times when you go a little off kilter with what you're trying to do. The idea behind the tips in this video is to bring you back so that you can smell, hey, I've gone down the wrong road. Couldn't be this complicated. Come back and then work on it again. But it's going to happen to you. You're going to get a little bit stuck. Don't worry about it. Come back to neutral and start afresh. You'll be on the right track. Okay, so if I have the bag here, let's say I had a very precise spot on the bag. There was no prize for hitting it hard, but I've got to hit it right on that spot. I'm going to be fairly firm and fairly passive. All this angles isn't going to help me do that. But say this was some sort of a carpet, I've got to create some speed and beat some dust out of it. Then I'm going to create some whip like that, create some angle and some snap. That's what it is in golf. If you want speed, you want lag, you want pop. If you want control like chipping, hey, much more one lever and firm. Think about these things. They'll help you in your golf life. They'll help you avoid some real pitfalls.